I'm your host, Effie Pilarino, and I have the pleasure today to have with us Ben Goertzel, who is, they say, the father of artificial intelligence, and definitely the founder of SingularityNET. Welcome, Ben.
Oh, thanks. No, it's good to be back and have a chat one more time.
Yeah, we met. It was what was it? December, I think, or November 2017 in Estonia. At
Yeah, that's
oh,
right. That was very memorable for a bunch of reasons. I mean, we had some great conversations, and that was the last stop on this huge sort of road show I was doing promoting
yeah, it was
Singularity.
just before the ICO for
Yeah,
SingularityNet.
that's right. That was the end of it. And I remember, like on the flight home from Estonia, I was like, all right, this is done. I'm not flying around. I'm not flying around anymore
Yeah, yeah.
for quite
And
some
you
time.
you were there with Albert, not with Sophia, from what I
Yeah,
remember, right?
yeah. We had Einstein. That's right. That was in Tallinn in December. There were more Christmas trees than people there. It was a
Yeah.
that was cool. And we were. You know, that was early in my adventure in the blockchain world, and obviously since that time, I've learned a lot more. We've built a lot of blockchain-based AI software and achieved some things. But I mean, you know, talking today, the adventure is still in some ways at an early stage, and we're still launching a bunch of new things and preparing for blockchain and AI to sort of perfuse themselves in every aspect of the world. But we're definitely, if you compare to then, we've come a reasonable way toward that goal.
But Ben, I remember, right after Estonia, I wrote an article, a blog about, the experience of being with you and your team in Estonia, and as you said, discussing about the big vision. And I remember writing that it was a big, hairy, audacious goal, the whole vision, because the way I perceived it, and it stayed with me since then, is that you really wanted to take this open source protocol that you were going to launch that was mainly for AI agents to um, give work to each other. But the main idea was that the collaboration would be in a benevolent way. So the incentives in this ecosystem would make it so the AI agents were collaborating, exchanging work and value in a benevolent way. So is that with you still? Have you kept that big vision? What has happened over the time in terms of development and this vision?
The big vision has not changed in any way, and we're still pursuing benevolent, decentralized AI, both working toward artificial general intelligence and working on, specific vertical market applications of AI. We've built an initial version of the SingularityNET platform, so that's in an advanced beta now. But we launched the first version of that in December 2017, but that was very sort of simple, primitive SingularityNET. Now we have much more advanced version of the protocol out there, and we have not thousands, but many dozens of AIs running on the network, communicating with each other, serving various functions. There's a couple apps out there that get their AI on the back end from AI agents running in SingularityNET. So in terms of software, I mean, we've shown you can make like a practical functioning decentralized AI network running in blockchain, and then our team has used that to do a bunch of interesting things in the AI space. So I mean, we've been using AI in medicine for clinical trial analytics to sort of help figure out what medication is right for a certain person. We're launching an app shortly called the Rejuve app, which
Yeah, I'm aware of that app.
yeah, it does like pre-symptomatic identification of infection from biosignals coming from Apple Watch and digital thermometer and so forth. I mean, we've been doing some things in the smart city domain as well with some customers in Middle East. I would say what hasn't happened yet, which obviously was part of our initial vision and we're still working toward. I mean, what hasn't happened yet is to get massive traction for use of this decentralized AI platform, right? I mean, we put it out there, it works. We're using the platform ourselves for AI projects that we're doing on our own and AI projects that we're doing with companies through our for-profit arm, Singularity Studio, but we haven't yet made a huge dent in how, you know, random people and companies on the globe are doing AI. And I mean, this, of course, this is a similar issue to what is seen in other parts of the blockchain space, right? I mean, there's, in the last few years, I think, I mean, there's been a lot of garbagey projects and scams and whatnot, but there's also been some really solid projects building good code, doing real things using blockchain, and then getting real world adoption for these things is happening, but it's proceeding step by step, and I mean more slowly than the advance of the tech itself. So I think that's really that's one of our next challenges, right? Is to use the platform we've built to make smarter and smarter and more useful AI systems with an orientation toward beneficial applications, and at the same time to get broader traction and broader usage by the community. And but I mean, both of these are challenging goals, obviously.
But these are typical challenges of any sort of emerging technology, and especially if it's you know, an emerging technology that is more open source and cross industry, the challenge is even bigger. So that's
Yeah, and if you're trying to make a platform, I mean, there's both more potential and there's more difficulty in getting all the feedbacks going to get it off the ground. I mean,
but
everyone wants to have a platform rather than a product, because then you're sort of reaping this like second order growth dynamic where
the network effect.
your platform will grow exponentially, then your platform can grow super exponentially, right? But
Sure, sure.
but
What kind of
getting it going is the
partners,
thing.
Ben, what kind of partners are you already, at least at the initial stage, collaborating with, both from the traditional world and from the blockchain world?
Yeah, so let me discuss
Maybe just
some
one or
very
two
interesting.
examples.
Yeah. I can discuss some very interesting examples on the application side, first of all. So for medical applications of our decentralized AI, so one of the initiatives we started now is an elder care robotics project. So we're working closely with Hanson Robotics. You mentioned we had David Hanson's Albert Einstein robot in Tallinn in Estonia when we met several years ago. So Hanson Robotics was heavily involved with SingularityNET in the very beginning. We hadn't done too much with Hanson Robotics in the last year or so. Now we've launched a new joint venture called Awakening Health, which is making basically a robot called Grace, which is like the Sophia robot's little sister. But so the Grace robot is specifically for use in nursing homes and senior living facilities and so forth. So it's a elder care robot with the Hanson Robotics face and body, and the AI is supplied by our OpenCog AGI engine running on the decentralized SingularityNET platform. And then we brought in a number of other partners there, one of whom, Connected Living, is a US-based company that's selling sort of end-user oriented software for elder care, elder care facilities and senior living and so forth. So they integrate together all the patient information, scheduling events. They can help elderly people make calls with their loved ones at home and so forth. So we're cooperating with them who have this whole integrated software ecosystem for old folks' homes to integrate our robots into the picture. But then it goes beyond just the robot, because then the SingularityNET platform can deal with sort of secure storage management analytics of a lot of different data relative to these medical facilities, and then connected living software can help use the what the AI has discovered to help optimize patient care more broadly beyond just interaction that the robot gives, right? So that's a highly vertical market specific example, but I think is a
it's a great example, and it also empowers individuals. It's not an example of enterprise use of AI, really. It's really empowering the end user, the elderly people, right?
Yeah, that's right. And so yeah, we're also, I mean, I can't say the name of the collaborator on this one, but we're working with a group running clinical trials of COVID-19 antivirals. So they're doing a trial in the US, which is basically trying different cocktails of antivirals on different patients.
Right.
And what we want to do is determine which antiviral cocktail to give a person based on their gene expression data. So you're using AI running neural net and the OpenCog symbolic AI running in SingularityNET platform to do sort of patient segmentation for personalized medicine, right? So these are all, I mean, get a specific application to work, which back ends on SingularityNET platform, and that's medical space, which is in
And
line with our
Rejuve is also in the health space, right?
That's right. So the Rejuve is a related project, which is aimed at helping people optimize their bodies and minds for long life. So you gather information about people's lifestyle and their biosignals, their physiology from an app ecosystem. Then an AI analyzes all that, and if people have DNA data or blood work, they can upload that also. Then the AI analyzes that, and it can give you recommendations for optimizing your lifespan, and it also can take that data, feed it to AI to help discover new longevity therapeutics and so forth. So that's I mean, that's something I've been working on for a while, application of AI to longevity biology. So we're actually, the first app we're launching probably next month from Rejuve is this app that does pre-symptomatic identification of infection, because that's of interest to a lot of people given the COVID situation. But actually the same biosignals you analyze for that are the same ones you want to analyze to tell someone's overall state of health for their longevity.
And again, this is going to be, one could opt as an individual, myself, and use the app. It's not for enterprise use.
So this is all in the vein of decentralized medicine and of giving people data sovereignty over their medical data about their own bodies. And blockchain has built into it security mechanisms and decentralized governance mechanisms that lend itself very well to sort of overhauling the medical system by replacing what's now often done within large centralized organizations with decentralized networks. So even if you input data through Rejuve's app, I mean, and that's going into some online data buckets analyzed by SingularityNET, but you should know where your data wallet is, right? And I mean, if you want to take it away from Rejuve, or you want to open it up to some other competing or complementary AI that's going to analyze it, I mean, that should be up for you to do. Like it's insane that all our medical records now are not under our own practical control or even knowledge. Like they're scattered among various doctors' offices that we've been to over our lifetime, and you have to
tell me about it.
You have to
But
beat the doctor over the head to get them to share an image of your own body that you paid a lot of money for, right? I mean, it's
I have lived in 6 different countries, right? So I can tell you, you know, where my medical records are, and it's impossible for me to get them practically. You know, it's a nightmare, really.
no,
And
you'd have to fly to 6 countries and then like hang out in the office and beat
exactly,
the doctors and their administrators over the head, right? So
exactly.
that so yeah, that you know, it's a very valuable application area. There's a lot of sort of social benefit, human benefit applications one could do. You could do a lot in education. You can do things in social work. We happen to have been focusing on the medical area because I had more background there, and it's relatively mature in terms of the whole data and IT ecosystem. Right now, of course, the challenge is for every vertical market, you need a network of partners like that. Now, a different sort of partnership we've been working on is at just the blockchain infrastructure side. So I've been talking a lot with Charles Hoskinson from
Yeah.
Cardano blockchain. Very brilliant guy. I mean, I guess he's a math PhD, and he's maybe, I don't know, 4 years older than my oldest son, who's currently doing his PhD in automated theorem proving. So I related to Charles immediately because we're both mathematicians, and I mean, unlike most bright young mathematicians, like he's become a very high net worth individual, and he's created Cardano, which is this amazing
Protocol.
functional programming based blockchain empire, right? So I was actually drawn to Cardano originally because they implemented their blockchain using the Haskell programming language, and I started programming in Haskell I think in 1993, way before it was trendy at all. Now it's sort of, it's not one of the most popular languages, but it's at least well known. It's used for some applications, used especially in some finance applications actually. And the reason you would use Haskell in this context is it lends itself to sort of provable correctness of programs, where you can write code, you can write down a description of what the code should do, and you can actually formally prove using math that the code does what, using an automated theorem prover, an automated mathematician, you can prove the code did what it said it would do. And this just seemed like it's often useful, but if you're dealing with like code that's managing huge amounts of money and other financial instruments, I mean, it's insane that the interchange of trillions of dollars, which happens around the world all the time, it's insane that this is not mostly happening within systems that are, you know, provably secure and provably doing what they were designed to do, since we have the technology for that, right? So I was very pleased to see someone taking that approach within the blockchain world. And apart from provable correctness, it seemed to me that their overall architecture and their sort of Haskell-based smart contract framework, which is called Plutus, the smart contract language, it seemed to me that this was better suited than anything else I'd seen to be sort of the infrastructure of the world computer. You know, when Vitalik Buterin, who was like 5 years old at the time or something, I don't know, no, but he's a teenager, right? When he started with Ethereum, he had the vision, let's make this a world computer, right? That's why you have smart contracts and not just money interactions like in Bitcoin. You have smart contracts are more general and scriptable, and then you can have all these different smart contracts living all over the place, interacting in complex ways. So you have a sort of secure, decentralized infrastructure for like a global intelligent computing system, right? And I mean, Vitalik wasn't the first to have that vision. I wrote about that in 2001 or something in the book, Creating Internet Intelligence, and others had that vision back before I was born into the 50s and 60s, right? But on the other hand, Ethereum's Solidity smart contract language was a big step toward being able to implement like a decentralized control system for a world computer. But Ethereum has a lot of foundational design flaws, and I mean, we see them right now manifesting themselves in the ridiculously large cost
Yes.
of an Ethereum transaction, like $1 per transaction, and the incredibly
and with the growth of DeFi, it's
and just how slow it is, right? So I mean, of course, there's Ethereum too, and they're improving these things, and they will improve these things. On the other hand, Cardano is a fundamentally better thought out platform, right? And it seemed like for the long term of our aspiration of using SingularityNET, not just to do some cool applications, but to build toward like an AGI brain, right? I mean, for that, Cardano seemed like a more solid platform.
so.
So
Is there a collaboration going on? What
yeah,
exactly in a
there's a
nutshell?
partnership, and we're so one part of that, which is sort of the simplest part, is we're in the process of making the AGI token multi-chain so that we're going to move a bunch of AGI tokens on the Cardano blockchain. I mean, we're not abandoning Ethereum, but there will be AGI on Ethereum and then AGI on Cardano.
Okay.
You can swap between them. But then the more interesting bit is we're working on a sort of AI description language integrated with Cardano's smart contract. So when you have an AI agent running in SingularityNET, it can describe in a sort of formal language, what it can do, what inputs it takes and outputs it gives, also what computing resources it takes, how long it takes, some properties of its computation graph. So the AI describes a bunch of aspects about itself to the other AIs in the network using this AI description language. And then this allows different AIs to piece themselves together into, overall assemblies in a more cognizant way, which is part of the vision of SingularityNET in the first place. And AIs can communicate now and outsource work to each other now in SingularityNET and assemble themselves into groups, but the AIs sort of they can communicate, but they have to DIY in terms of like each AI knowing which other AIs to outsource to and knowing what other AIs can do what with what properties. So we want to automate that, and that's much easier in the Cardano infrastructure than the Ethereum infrastructure because of the nature of Cardano's smart contracts having just a higher level abstraction in the smart contract language. So basically in Cardano, you can take the formal logic description of what an AI does and you can bake it into the smart contracts that the AI is used to communicate, which is cool. So there's a lot of different layers here, right? There's SingularityNET platform. There's general purpose AI tools like OpenCog running on SingularityNET platform. Then there's application specific AI systems like these medical things we're talking about that use like OpenCog running on SingularityNET. Then below SingularityNET, there's Ethereum or soon Cardano, which are supplying this sort of decentralized compute infrastructure for the whole thing. And it's amazing that we're able to actually build all this stuff and get it to
forward,
operate together. And then you mentioned decentralized finance. So that's
I cannot not mention it. You must be doing something in finance.
Right. So that's another ingredient there, and it has sort of two aspects. I mean, one aspect is finance applications are another kind of application that you can build on top of the AI agents that are running on top of the SingularityNET platform, right? I mean, just as we can do medical stuff, you can do finance stuff, and finance has been early adopters of AI and other advanced technologies for a long time. But another aspect is I've been thinking about how you use decentralized finance to improve the sort of financial operation and the injection of liquidity into this whole, cryptocurrency driven decentralized technology ecosystem, right? Because if you believe, as I do, that advanced technology, software technology, AI technology are really what's going to be driving humanity's evolution during the next decades, and maybe even toward like what Kurzweil has called a technological singularity, right? Then making sure that advanced technologies, AIs and others with a decentralized basis under them, this becomes an incredibly critical thing, right? Because you're talking about, I mean, if AI is going to sort of dominate the global economy, not necessarily in terms of AI becoming a dictator, but in the same way that computers dominate the global economy now, right? I mean, if AI is going to pervade everything, wouldn't it be nice if this was decentralized, democratically controlled AI? But then what does that come down to? That comes down to, you know, a SingularityNET and an Ocean protocol, a Shivam. It comes down to these relatively small projects that are making altcoins to power their networks and so forth. And the whole altcoin based tech startup economy is very, very small and in some ways very pathological compared to like the venture funded startup economy, which is so much larger. Like that. So the default way to make amazing new technology, you start a new company, you raise VC money, and you groom it for acquisition by a big company, right? And this is going to get you a centralized AGI, not a decentralized AGI. So, I mean, SingularityNET obviously is very important to me. OpenCog is very important to me, but what I'd like to see is a better ecosystem where any startup technology project that releases a utility token has a sort of a better operating market ecosystem to exist within. Because what happens now, you have an amazing tech idea. If you decide to go the decentralized way instead of the centralized way, I mean, you can still do an ICO or an IEO now, but then your token is out there. It's still mostly Binance and other centralized exchanges, although DEXs like Uniswap, Miniswap, and so on are rising. But then the overall market ecosystem is pretty crude and still, to be honest, largely driven by like pump and dump groups on Telegram and so forth, right? So you need a much more sophisticated financial ecosystem behind the universe of lower liquidity and modest liquidity altcoins. And so this is part of decentralized finance, right? Because decentralized finance is
a lot of other things.
And in general, with decentralization, you can't say it's always good or always bad, right? I mean, decentral is just not central. So something like the government, like Somalia is not centralized government, but I would rather live here in the U.S. than in Somalia with a decentralized government, because it's a decentralized bunch of like armed militias going around shooting people, right? So I mean, decentralized is the absence of one sort of pathology, but it doesn't imply there's not others. So in decentralized finance so far, since it rose to prominence largely during the last year, you know, we've seen some amazing high quality projects like a compound finance and MakerDAO has been around a while, token sets. I mean, there's a lot of good things. We've also seen a lot of very pathological things, which I'm not going to run through the list. Many named after foodstuff items, right? So I mean, but I mean, the potential is very clear, right? If you take sophisticated financial mechanisms, which have evolved over quite some time in the traditional finance space, and which are really in their own way, you know, they're quite good at providing liquidity for projects and at balancing volatility versus value increase and so forth. If you take some of these traditional finance mechanisms and democratize them by making them available to, you know, a larger class of participants who don't have to be registered investors and so forth, and also make them accessible to startup projects that haven't gone through the, you know, the VC and acquisition route, I mean, then you may be able to just inject a lot more health into and a lot more liquidity into the utility token ecosystem. Because a lot of people have asked us, like, why don't you let every AI product built on top of SingularityNet just have its own token? Because Ocean Protocol has done something like that. If you upload your data, say your DNA data or something in the Ocean, you can do an initial data offering, and then a token is automatically generated for your data. But that's really cool. I'm glad Ocean did that. But what's happened is there's an insane amount of scams and bizarre things happening in terms of their initial data offering. I'm not saying that was bad to do that. It's great to just take a leap out and then work with it. the approach I wanted to take before trying to experiment with a system where every product running on SingularityNet could have its own token. Let's try to make a more robust financial ecosystem, not just for those, but for any, you know, small to moderate market cap altcoin. And so that's what led to the SingularityDAO project, which we announced quite recently. So this is an attempt to use some of the cool mechanisms and methods from the DeFi space, but for the specific purpose of creating a sort of better system with more liquidity and less volatility for lower liquidity altcoins. Because most of the DeFi stuff out there, I mean, it's about Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? And it's about derivatives on top of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And that's, I mean, that's not bad. I hold some Bitcoin and Ethereum too, right? I mean, these are interesting from a finance point of view. But what I wanted to do was, okay, let's say someone wants to, you know, participate in the world of decentralized startups. It could be with various motivations. Let's say they like decentralized AI startups. They like decentralized startups that are trying to save the world, or they just want to see what's the highest value ones out there, right? So we want to give them a mechanism to, with sort of one click, invest in a weighted combination of a large set of lower liquidity altcoins. So that becomes like it's a token set of smaller altcoins,
So
which
that's
is
a
then,
little bit like compound, like a robo
it's,
advisor.
well, if you wanted to look at it like that, it's more like compound built on top of token sets, because so token sets basically lets you make something that's kind of like it's more like an ETF, right? It's like a tokenized ETF. So what we have in SingularityDAO, there's multiple layers. I mean, the bottom layer is just existing altcoins, right? The next layer is what we call dyna sets, which are like, they're a bit like token sets, except it could be like 10 or 50 lower liquidity altcoins with a certain weighting among them, right? But then you have an AI robo advisor that is rebalancing the various tokens based on their overall quality, and can remove or add something. So the first layer of SingularityDAO, it's a lot like token sets, which is a set protocol, an existing project, but token sets is focused only on the top altcoins, whereas we're explicitly wanting to deal with moderate liquidity ones also. And of course, in token sets, the token set is managed by a sort of simple rule, whereas we're managing a dynamic token set, a dyna set by an AI robo advisor, right? So which is what comes out of our background with SingularityNET and doing fintech on SingularityNET. So then the next layer, though, so you get a token for each of these dynamic token sets, and these tokens themselves, like an ETF token, these tokens can be staked. You can put them in a SingularityDAO vault, and then you can earn Sing yield, like Singularity yield tokens from that. And that's where it gets more like a compound, right? So there's sort of a token set type layer, and then there's a compound finance type layer on top of it, because in that top layer, if you are staking the tokens corresponding to your dynamic token set, right, then those can be loaned out, and in effect the interest comes back to those who have been staking or getting the yield tokens via an ongoing change in the conversion rate of the yield tokens to the ETF tokens. So it's,
and the AGI token in SingularityDAO, is it kind of behind the scenes like a meta token?
it's behind the scenes because the AI robo advisors operating the token set, and then the AIs also that are borrowing from the liquidity pool to make trades. The first ones we're going to roll out run on SingularityNET platform, and they use the AGI token. So I mean, it's a separate initiative which is being incubated by SingularityNET, and these are all different tokens. But you know, the smooth operation of SingularityDAO requires AI robo advisors and AI agents doing prediction and arbitrage. And we're building the initial population of these AIs on SingularityNET platform. So yeah, from a SingularityNET view, I mean, just as these DeFi projects that we've been reviewing have massively driven utilization of Ethereum network, the AI agents needed for the smooth functioning of SingularityDAO will give a lot of utilization for the SingularityNET platform. And that in a way, you're you're not fully doing what you want in terms of getting traction, because you're getting traction for a crypto network within the crypto universe, right? It's still not quite getting traction within the real economy, but I think it's a very positive step, right? I mean, because the
No,
crypto
I
universe.
see it more that you cannot not get involved in this cutting edge experimentation and true innovation that is going on with the DeFi, which is about really manufacturing the financial products that we know, a deposit with interest and a loan and so on, in a very different way, in a genuinely different way. It's not about distributing them in a differently like it is with fintechs. You're doing something different. So I think it's
Yeah, I think the goal is different, right? I mean, because our goal is really to get more liquidity into early stage, high quality, like decentralized startups. Because in order to support all this loaning out and so on, somewhere in the back end, someone needs to be making markets for the underlying utility tokens. And if you have more liquidity in these tokens, then that just gives a lot more room for the folks running the projects to grow and to diminish the volatility of their token prices and
yeah,
so forth. So the goal is different. It's also, it's more challenging in some ways, right?
it is more challenging, but it seems to me that it's very much in alignment with the original and big vision, which is again to have different incentives to create an ecosystem that is much more benevolent and fair in this case, and give a chance to innovation and not stifle it because of the use.
Yeah, because while I have my ethical differences with the Goldman Sachs and central banks and all these institutions, you have to admit at pricing risk, they are far better than any other entities on this planet, right? And that's a form of sort of global inequality that is not much thought about. But these large entities have a much more refined way to assess the risk of different investments, combinations of investments, different scenarios. It's terrible that large investment banks are better doing that than governments at the moment, right? But
That's
it's absolutely the case, right? But I think to the extent that we move AI driven finance in a more advanced direction, and it absorbs more and more of the economy, then you're helping a bunch of small projects to grow and flourish, and these small projects are building the technology that's building our future. You're also democratizing the assessment and analysis of risk and the making of predictions, right? Which is
yeah.
going to be quite important.
I think, Ben, I'd like to close on asking you on this note and asking you, what do you think that humanity really needs? I mean, we touched on several points about, benevolence, about ethics, and now you spoke about risk management. There's all these aspects. So if you were to pick on, from your point of view, devoting all your energy and your time with SingularityNET, what does humanity really need?
Well, what humanity needs most foundationally is not about technology. Humanity needs a massive upgrade in its state of consciousness toward a position of a feeling of fundamental joy and well-being. And if people have a feeling of fundamental joy and well-being, then their judgments about everything become different, and their relationships with others become different. And how to engineer that is that's a real challenge, right? And I mean, you could argue we've even gone downhill in that regard since the Stone Age period, when our predecessors in indigenous societies may have had, you know, a more profound sense of joy and satisfaction in their life. Now, it may be that with the advanced technology that we're building now, we're creating a situation that will sort of facilitate people upgrading their state of consciousness in this way. I mean, if we can create material abundance so that people aren't fighting over small amounts of resources all the time, that
Security.
will certainly go a long way. If we can create information systems that, you know, militate toward unity rather than polarization. I mean, unlike the Facebooks and Twitters of the world, that will go a long way. But what I'm not sure of, honestly, is will it work like we use advanced technology by hook or by crook to, you know, create abundance? Then that creates a position in which humans can finally like move to a state of psychological, social, and spiritual health. Or, you know, are we going to need to upgrade the consciousness state of humanity to get to a positive singularity at all? Because there's a risk that the sort of lower grade states of mind in the powers that be on the planet lead us to like apocalypse or to building evil AGIs or something, right? And
Exactly.
I mean, the more we can do to upgrade the state of consciousness of humanity now, before we get to the singularity event, I mean, the higher would seem to be the odds that the singularity event comes out positively. And I mean, I think that's a very, very big thing to do. But I mean, I think making decentralized AI systems and making the decentralized AI ecosystem flourish at least can be a piece of that, because you're putting AI, which is arguably the most critical aspect of humanity's future evolution. I mean, you're putting AI at least in the hands of the vast, messy mass of humanity, rather than in the hands of just a few corporations and governments. So I mean, I think that creates a better sort of a better medium for evolution of upgraded consciousness in humans to occur. But it's just one piece of the picture, right? And yeah, I do view all these decentralized finance schemes and medical AI and crypto platform integrations. I mean, all these, I do view all these things in terms of this broader trajectory that humanity is sort of stumbling along toward the future.
I agree with you, Ben. I don't know if you're a believer that we have transitioned to what the spirituals call the Aquarian age, which is higher consciousness levels and less materialism. And I think that we have the opportunity, as we push and experiment with these technologies, to really think at a higher level of consciousness and use them as if we are heading that way in a higher level
Yeah.
of
So there's
consciousness.
a quote about the age of Aquarius. There's a quote from William Gibson, the science fiction writer, which is that the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. Because when you talk about going to the spiritual age beyond focusing on material resources, you know, when I talk about that with my friends in Ethiopia, they're just like, but wait, my aunt just died because we couldn't afford medicine, even though we knew what was wrong with her, right? So I mean, there's there's definitely that aspect where there are more and more people, including some who are influential in the technology and media and even financial world, who are acting more from a position of joy and connectedness than from, you know, division and selfishness. On the other hand, I mean, globally, you've got really horrible wealth inequality. And, you know, Ethiopia, where we have our AI office, one of our SingularityNET AI offices, like now there's a civil war apparently breaking out there, right? And so, I mean, you've got just innocent people getting shot because of fights between one tribe and another. So, I mean, we're certainly at a interesting juxtaposition of
Yes,
factors, right?
yes, yes,
And
yes.
how they're all going to play out as we advance is not obvious. And decentralizing finance and sort of decentralizing healthcare certainly can be a big part of it. But when you have countries with civil war and where, I mean, cryptocurrency also was outlawed in many of these countries, right? So these DeFi schemes, I mean, credit cards don't even exist functionally for most citizens in sub-Saharan Africa, right? So we have very complex situation on the planet now. I mean, we're building tools though that are designed sort of to be used more easily for good and for democracy and for benefit than for the opposite. But it's
I loved what you said the other day at the Digital Week online with Dennis, that you were saying, the problem is that AI is used for, gaming and killing. And
it's selling, killing, spying, and crooked gambling. Yeah,
yes,
that's
yes,
it. So with DeFi, we're aiming to make the gambling a bit less crooked anyway, right?
yes, yes.
And medicine, if the AI is doing more healing and killing, we'll all be better off. So yeah, I think, but the bulk of AI resources are, yeah, they're behind selling, killing, spying, and crooked gambling, right? And that's what humanity is doing, which is kind of insane if you take a broader perspective on it, right? Because if you think about it, like you have this species which is maybe 10,000 years into the creation of civilization, and they've gone very fast. They've made machines, they've made computers, they've made robots, and they're now on the verge, historically speaking, of making machines that are smarter than they are, with the ability to solve all the problems that the species has faced during its whole evolution. But instead of concentrating resources on like how do we carry off this transition as best as possible and be sure these superhuman minds we create are acting for our broad benefit, instead of focusing on that, almost the whole AI space is focused on, no, how can I this year, how can I use the next incremental step in AI to place me above everybody else, right? And that's what almost all the resources are toward, is increasing relative status or wealth of a small set of people. And then we're progressing toward creating AGI and superhuman AI mostly as a side effect of things that people are doing to gain relative advantage over others,
Because of
and
this fierce competition, right? That is
because
going
of
on.
the psychological perception of fierce competition in many cases, right? I mean, I think that there's fierce competition in an African city where there's rival militias coming to shoot you and kidnap your sons to join the army. I mean, I think in the developed world, things are pretty good. We're by historical standards, we're incredibly rich, and I mean, both as individuals and as a society, there could be a huge amount more energy going into slightly longer term, more beneficial applications, right?
Yeah.
I mean that may happen gradually over the next years. We'll see. I mean, so we're certainly, the advent of decentralized AI tools will make it easier for that to happen, because at least the infrastructure is there. So take Facebook as an example. I mean, I barely use it anymore. I mean, it's funny. In the beginning, I went on Facebook to spy on my kids, but now you do it to spy on your grandparents, who are the only ones left on there, right? But I mean, someone should make a Facebook type tool, a social networking tool, which is decentralized and democratic, and which uses AI to filter information in a way that's transparent and controlled by each user, right? Someone should build that. it's a huge thing to build. It's a huge thing to market and roll out. At least, however, with SingularityNET, we're creating a decentralized platform for the AI underlying something like this, right? So if some brilliant young hacker in some part of the world puts together and pushes out a decentralized Facebook, I mean, they don't have to build all their own AI. We have a decentralized AI platform that can serve as the AI behind there. And the same you'd say with decentralized finance, right? Like what we're doing with SingularityDAO is part of the story, but we're also trying to create an ecosystem where if someone comes up with some really clever new way of doing like exotic derivatives on top of altcoins or something, right? I mean, let someone create some amazing new thing there, but we've created this, or we are in the early stages now in that case of creating this decentralized ecosystem for the full spectrum of crypto assets, and that should make it easier and easier for new people to come in and do things that sort of decentralize, democratize, and beneficialize more and more aspects of the socioeconomic system.
Great. Ben, on that note, let me thank you for the wonderful discussion we had today. And I hope that we can meet in person in 2021.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we will. The vaccine news is looking good. So I mean, putting that together with everything that is being done with antivirals and so on, it looks like we're gonna squash this one, and hopefully with the decentralized AI and medical infrastructures we're building, when the next pandemic comes, which is almost sure to happen at some point, then humanity will deal with it a little less stupidly, right? So
yes, less tracing apps and less other decisions. It's not only the
yeah.
technology, right? Again, thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you. Great conversation as always.